Chosen ones, the divine doesn't issue apologies for what it creates, and neither should you. There's a frequency shift happening right now that's exposing everyone who thought they had you figured out. They're watching you step into a power they can't explain, claim a space they said wasn't yours, and dominate a game they swore you couldn't play. What they're witnessing isn't random, it's destiny catching up to design. You're not taking over by accident, you were built for this life. Every cell in your body was encoded for this exact moment. The people who tried to keep you small are now scrambling because the takeover they feared is no longer coming. It already happened. And here's the revelation that's about to free you completely. You don't owe anyone an apology for becoming the force of nature you were created to be. Not the ones who doubted you, not the ones who used you, not even the ones who loved you but couldn't handle your expansion. This is divine realignment, and it's non-negotiable. Picture a lion apologizing to sheep for being a lion. Absurd, right? That's exactly how ridiculous it is for you to apologize for your greatness. Let's start with what actually happened to you. Not the sanitized version you tell at dinner parties, the real story. There were people in your life who studied you like a manual. They learned your patterns, your weaknesses, the exact pressure points that made you doubt yourself. This wasn't accidental. Manipulators don't stumble into their craft, they refine it. They watched how you lit up when you talked about your dreams, then carefully placed obstacles in those exact paths. When you mentioned wanting to start that business, they reminded you about that one time you failed at something completely unrelated. When you talked about your potential, they brought up your past, every single time. That's not concern, that's strategy. You thought you were dealing with friends, family members, colleagues who had your best interest at heart. You made excuses for their behavior because that's what good people do. You gave them chance after chance because you believed in redemption. But here's what you didn't see. They weren't confused about your value. They knew exactly what you were capable of. That's precisely why they worked so hard to keep you contained. Fear recognizes power before confidence does. They saw the giant in you while you were still believing you were small, and that terrified them, because once you figured it out, once you truly understood what lived inside you, their little games would be over. Think about the conversations that left you feeling drained, the ones where you walked away questioning yourself, even though you came in feeling certain. That wasn't coincidence, that was design. They had a playbook. First, they'd validate you just enough to keep you engaged. Then they'd insert doubt disguised as concern. I just worry that you're not ready. Are you sure you can handle that? Maybe you should wait until you're more prepared. Every statement carefully crafted to sound like wisdom while functioning as a cage. They positioned themselves as the reasonable ones, the practical voices in your life. And you, wanting to be humble and coachable, listened. You absorbed their limitations and called it being realistic. But something kept nagging at you, a voice that wouldn't shut up no matter how much you tried to be reasonable. It whispered in the quiet moments. It showed up in your dreams. It made you restless when you tried to settle for less. That voice wasn't rebellion, it was recognition. Your spirit knew what your mind hadn't caught up to yet. You were never meant to fit into their carefully constructed narrative. You were meant to explode it entirely. Every time they tried to make you smaller, that voice got louder. Every time they dismissed your vision, your determination grew stronger. They thought they were training you to stay in line. They were actually training you to become unstoppable. The manipulation had layers. Surface level, they'd praise you for small things while subtly discouraging big moves. Go deeper, they'd take credit for your ideas while making you feel like you couldn't execute without them. Deeper still, they'd create dependence by convincing you that your judgment couldn't be trusted. The most insidious part, they made you feel grateful for their involvement. They positioned their control as care, their manipulation as mentorship. You genuinely believed you needed them. That's how good they were. They didn't just want to use you, they wanted you to thank them for it. And let's talk about how they tried to own your narrative. They acted like they discovered you, like you were nothing before they showed up. They took credit for your growth as if your potential didn't exist until they pointed it out. They positioned themselves as the reason you had any success, any opportunity, any breakthrough. It was gaslighting on a sophisticated level. They rewrote history while you were still living it, made you question your own memory of events, made you doubt whether you actually did the work or if they did it for you. This wasn't support, this was colonization of your story. They wanted to plant their flag on your accomplishments and claim them as territories they conquered. You started noticing patterns. Every time you had a win, they found a way to minimize it or redirect credit. Every time you made progress, they reminded you of how far you still had to go. Every time you celebrated, they found something to criticize. It was never about helping you improve. It was about keeping you insecure enough to stay accessible, because secure people set boundaries. Confident people ask questions, self-assured people don't need constant validation, and all of those things threatened their control. They needed you uncertain, seeking, reaching for approval they would never fully give. Here's where their plan fell apart. They underestimated something crucial. They thought your power came from confidence, from external validation, from circumstances aligning, so they attacked all of those things. They chipped away at your confidence, withheld validation, and created chaotic circumstances. What they didn't understand is that your power was never external. It was woven into your DNA before you took your first breath. You weren't built for this life because you got lucky or worked hard or had the right connections. You were built for this life because there's a divine blueprint inside you that no human manipulation can alter. They were trying to reprogram something that was coded by a force they don't have access to. Every obstacle they placed became a teacher. Every betrayal became a boundary. Every attempt to diminish you became fuel. You weren't just learning their tactics, you were developing immunity to them. Think about it. The things that devastated you 2 years ago barely register now. The opinions that used to derail you for weeks don't even make you pause. The people who used to make you question everything now reveal themselves within minutes. You've been building discernment in real time, and it's made you dangerous in the best possible way. Not dangerous to good people. Dangerous to games, to manipulation, to anyone who thinks they can play with your destiny like it's a toy they can pick up and put down. While you were growing through all of this, something else was happening behind the scenes. The divine was orchestrating moves you couldn't see. Doors were closing that needed to close. Connections were severing that needed to sever. Opportunities were being repositioned to align with your new frequency. You thought you were just surviving day to day, but there was a master plan unfolding. Every person who walked away was making room. Every disappointment was a redirection. Every closed door was protecting you from a path that would have kept you small. The divine wasn't punishing you with those losses. The divine was preparing you for gains your old life couldn't accommodate. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. You are being refined in ways that only pressure can produce. Think about diamonds. They don't form in comfort, they form under immense pressure, in darkness, over time. That's what was happening to you. Every moment you thought you were breaking, you were actually becoming unbreakable. Every situation that felt like too much was actually exactly enough to transform you into someone who could handle the weight of your destiny. They thought they were crushing you. They were compressing you into something precious, something rare, something that could cut through anything that tries to stand in your way now. Then came the moment. You might not remember the exact day, but there was a shift. Something clicked. Maybe it was after another disappointment. Maybe it was in a moment of clarity during a walk. Maybe it was when you finally got tired of your own excuses, but something inside you said, enough. Not angry enough, not dramatic enough, just quiet, certain enough. The kind of enough that doesn't need to announce itself because it's already moving. You stopped waiting for permission. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. And the moment you did, the entire game changed. Because the only power they ever had was the power you gave them by believing you needed their approval. The shift wasn't loud, but it was seismic. You started making moves they didn't understand, decisions that didn't make sense to their limited vision. Investments in yourself that looked reckless to people who never believed in you anyway. You stopped consulting people who had no business advising you. You stopped seeking input from people whose lives didn't reflect what you were trying to build. You became selective about who got access to your plans, your dreams, your next moves, and that selectivity drove them insane. They were used to knowing everything. They were used to having a vote. They were used to being in the room where it happened. Now they're not even in the building. Watch what happened next. The people who were so confident in their control suddenly got nervous. They could feel the shift before they could name it. You weren't arguing with them anymore. That's what really threw them off. You weren't trying to prove your worth or defend your decisions. You were simply moving, making decisions, taking action, building your vision with or without their blessing. And that's when the panic set in on their end. They realized they'd lost something they took for granted: access. Access to your energy, your time, your gifts, your presence. They'd been feeding off you for so long that they didn't know how to function without that supply. Now they're starving, and you're thriving. Here's what they never told you about energy. It's currency, real currency. More valuable than money, because money can be replaced, but time and life force cannot. They were spending your currency while convincing you that you owed them the transaction. Every time you left their presence feeling depleted, that wasn't weakness on your part, that was theft on theirs. They positioned themselves as needy, as struggling, as requiring your constant support, and your good heart gave and gave and gave. But notice something. The moment you stopped giving, they didn't collapse. They found another supply, because they were never actually in need. They were in greed. There's a difference between helping someone stand and letting someone lean on you while they refuse to use their own legs. You were their energy source, their validation dispenser, their emotional cleanup crew. They created messes and expected you to make sense of them. They started fires and watched you scramble to put them out. They asked questions they already knew the answers to, just to keep you engaged, just to keep you spinning in their orbit. And you did it because you thought that's what loyalty looked like, that's what love looked like, that's what commitment looked like. But real loyalty doesn't require you to betray yourself. Real love doesn't drain you empty. Real commitment doesn't mean committing to your own diminishment so someone else can feel big. The energy theft was so normalized, you didn't even recognize it as theft. You called it being there for people. You called it being dependable. You called it being strong. And you are strong. But strength isn't meant to be a weapon someone else uses against you. Your capacity to endure isn't an invitation for people to test your limits. Your ability to forgive isn't permission for people to keep offending. They mistook your patience for permanence, your grace for gullibility, your heart for a doormat they could wipe their feet on indefinitely. That miscalculation is now costing them everything. Now watch what happens when you reclaim your energy and redirect it toward your purpose. Everything accelerates. Projects that used to drag suddenly have momentum. Ideas that felt stuck suddenly flow. Opportunities that seemed impossible suddenly appear. That's not coincidence. That's what happens when you stop leaking power to people who don't deserve access to it. You're not working harder now, you're working aligned. You're not luckier now, you're focused. You're not different now, you're finally yourself. And the version of yourself that operates from fullness instead of depletion is unstoppable. They're watching this unfold with something between disbelief and rage. How are you thriving without them? How are you succeeding after they said you couldn't? How are you rising when they predicted your fall? The math isn't mathing for them because they genuinely believed you needed them. They thought they were essential to your story. They thought their presence was the reason you had any success at all. And now you're demonstrating in real time that they were never the asset they claimed to be. They were the liability you've been carrying. And the moment you put that weight down, you started flying. Here's what they're realizing too late. They had a front row seat to greatness, and they used it to throw stones. They had access to someone who was going places, and they used that access to create roadblocks. They had the opportunity to be part of something historic, and they chose to be obstacles instead of allies. Now they're on the outside looking in, watching you build the empire they said was impossible, watching you become the person they said you'd never be, watching you live the life they said you didn't deserve, and there's no getting that opportunity back. You don't rewind destiny. You don't get second chances to be part of someone's origin story after you tried to write their ending. Some of them are scrambling now. They're trying to find ways back in. Suddenly they're liking your posts, commenting supportive things, showing up where you show up. It's pathetic and transparent. They're trying to position themselves for the benefits of your success after doing everything possible to prevent that success. They want proximity to your power, now that it's undeniable. They want association with your name, now that it carries weight. They want to be seen with you, now that being seen with you means something. But you see through it. You know the difference between people who believed in you when you were building, and people who show up when you've already built. Their attempts to reconnect are insulting. They think you forgot. They think time erased the memories of their betrayal, their doubt, their sabotage. They think your success made you desperate enough for approval that you'll accept anyone who offers it now. But you're not that person anymore. You remember everything. You remember who was there in the dark. You remember who stayed when things were uncertain. You remember who invested in you when you were still potential instead of proof. And those people, the real ones, they're still by your side. The others, they're irrelevant to your story now. Watch how they try to take credit anyway. They'll tell people they always knew you'd make it. They'll claim they were mentors, supporters, believers from day one. They'll insert themselves into your narrative wherever they can find an opening. But the truth has a way of revealing itself. The people who were actually there know who was there. The receipts exist. The timeline doesn't lie. And you don't need to defend yourself against their false claims. Your life speaks louder than their lies. Your success drowns out their revisionist history. Just keep building, keep rising, keep winning. The truth needs no defense attorney. Some of them tried to come back. They showed up with apologies that sounded almost real. They had explanations for their behavior, stories about their own struggles, reasons why they acted the way they did. And here's the thing, you heard them. You acknowledged their humanity, but you didn't let them back in, because you've learned the difference between understanding someone and giving them access to hurt you again. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can forgive without reconciling. You can recognize their pain without absorbing it. These are advanced concepts that manipulators count on you not understanding. They bank on your compassion being bigger than your wisdom. But you've developed both now. Trompadeshan. Others took a different approach. They started telling people they always believed in you. They rewrote history in real time. Suddenly they were your biggest supporters, your earliest champions, the ones who saw your potential from day one. It's almost impressive how quickly they reinvented their role in your story. But you were there. You remember who showed up and who didn't. You remember who celebrated your small wins and who minimized your big dreams. You remember who made space for you and who made you feel like you were taking up too much space. The receipts aren't in your head. They're in your body, in your memory, in the years you spent trying to earn approval from people who never intended to give it freely. Here's something they didn't expect. Your success isn't just personal elevation, it's generational disruption. Every pattern you break, every limitation you shatter, every ceiling you crash through, creates a new blueprint for everyone connected to you. Your children won't have to fight the battles you fought. Your siblings see possibilities they couldn't see before. Your community has proof that the old rules don't apply anymore. This is bigger than your individual rise. This is ancestral work. This is breaking chains that have held your lineage hostage for generations. That's why the resistance was so intense. That's why they fought so hard to keep you down. They knew what you breaking free would mean. It would mean everyone behind you could break free too. The enemy wasn't just threatened by your success, the enemy was threatened by what your success would trigger. One person walking in their full power gives permission for thousands to do the same. One person refusing to apologize for their greatness normalizes greatness for everyone watching. One person taking over unapologetically makes taking over look possible. You're not just changing your life, you're changing the trajectory for everyone who thought they had to stay small to stay safe, who thought they had to dim their light to be loved, who thought they had to apologize for existing in their power. Now let me put you onto something real, Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching chosen ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. Now you're standing in a reality they didn't prepare for. Your success isn't theoretical anymore. It's tangible, it's undeniable, it's happening whether they acknowledge it or not, and that's the part that breaks them. They wanted to be the gatekeepers of your validation. They wanted you to need their stamp of approval. They wanted to always have leverage, always have something you were chasing from them. But you stopped chasing, you started creating, and in doing so, you made their opinions irrelevant, not because you're arrogant, because you finally understand your actual worth, and it's not up for debate. The takeover looks different than people expect. There's no dramatic announcement, no revenge plot, no public call-out. You simply stepped into your power and stayed there. You made decisions from your knowing instead of from their limitations. You built from your vision instead of their fears. You moved with your purpose instead of their agenda. And day by day, choice by choice, you created a life that reflects who you actually are, not who they tried to make you. That's what a real takeover looks like. It's not loud, it's inevitable. It's not aggressive, it's alignment. It's not about destroying them. It's about building something they can't access because they disqualified themselves. Here's what's happening in the spiritual realm, while all this plays out in the physical. Every attack on your destiny has been recorded. Every attempt to dim your light has been noted. Every seed of doubt they planted has been accounted for. And there's a divine justice system that doesn't operate on human timelines or human logic. You're not taking over because you're getting revenge. You're taking over because it's time, because the season has shifted, because the preparation phase is complete and the manifestation phase has begun. This isn't personal, even though it feels personal. This is purpose. This is destiny unfolding exactly as it was designed to unfold. The people who tried to stop you are now watching from positions they can't climb out of, not because you pushed them down, because they stayed where they were while you kept rising. They're experiencing the natural consequences of their choices. They had opportunities to grow with you, to support your journey, to be part of something beautiful. They chose control instead of collaboration. They chose ego instead of encouragement. And now they're living with that choice. You don't need to gloat. You don't need to prove anything. Your life is the proof. Your peace is the proof. Your progress is the proof. But let's talk about the guilt for a second, because it's real. Even now, even knowing what they did, part of you feels bad about your success. Part of you wants to dim your light so they don't feel bad about staying in the dark. Part of you considers apologizing for taking up space, for claiming what's yours, for becoming who you were meant to be. That's the residue of their programming. That's the last bit of their control trying to reassert itself, and you need to reject it completely. Your guilt serves no divine purpose. Your shrinking helps no one. Your apology would be a lie because you're not sorry, and you shouldn't be sorry. You're becoming exactly who you were created to be, and that requires no apology. Think about this carefully. If you were built for this life, and you were, then living it fully is obedience. Shrinking is actually disobedience. Every time you play small to make someone else comfortable, you're rejecting your assignment. Every time you downplay your gifts to avoid making waves, you're hiding what was meant to be seen. Every time you apologize for your excellence, you're agreeing with the people who tried to limit you. And they were wrong. Not partially wrong, completely wrong. They saw you through the lens of their limitations, their fears, their small vision. But the force that created you sees you through the lens of infinite possibility, divine purpose, and unlimited potential. Your responsibility now is protection, not just of yourself, but of the vision you're carrying, because it's bigger than you. It's not just about your success or your peace or your vindication. It's about everyone who's watching you break free, wondering if they can do the same. It's about the next generation that needs to see someone who didn't apologize for their greatness. It's about shifting paradigms and breaking generational curses and proving that manipulators don't get the final word. Your takeover is permission for someone else's breakthrough. Your refusal to shrink is inspiration for someone else's expansion. This isn't just about you anymore. It never was. Let's be crystal clear about something. The bridges that burned weren't accidents. They weren't collateral damage. They were necessary demolitions. Those connections weren't serving you. They were servicing themselves through you. And when you finally cut off their supply, when you finally said no more free access, no more unlimited withdrawals from the bank of your generosity, they revealed their true nature. Watch how quickly friends become enemies when you stop being useful. Watch how fast family becomes hostile when you stop being controllable. Watch how rapidly mentors turn into critics when you stop being small enough to manage. The bridges burned because they were built on faulty foundations from the start. You can't maintain a connection with someone who only wants you accessible when you're struggling, only wants you around when you're beneath them, only wants you present when you're serving their agenda. That's not a bridge, that's a trap disguised as a pathway. And you didn't burn it, you simply stopped maintaining it. You stopped doing all the work to keep something alive that was designed to keep you half dead. They're angry now because rebuilding requires effort. They're not willing to invest. They want the old arrangement back. You at their disposal, them with all the power. That arrangement is permanently closed. The bridge didn't burn, it expired. Here's what nobody warns you about. The lonelier it gets at first. When you cut off the energy vampires, when you refuse the manipulators, when you walk away from everyone who treated your presence like a given and your absence like a threat, there's a quietness that follows. It can feel like loss. It can feel like maybe you made a mistake. It can feel like perhaps you were too harsh, too quick, too unforgiving. But sit in that quiet long enough and you'll realize something. It's not loneliness, it's peace. It's the sound of your nervous system finally relaxing. It's the feeling of your energy staying inside your own body instead of being siphoned off in every direction. It's the experience of your thoughts being your own instead of contaminated by their projections. That quiet is where you found yourself again. That's where you remembered who you were before they told you who to be. That's where you reconnected with dreams they convinced you to abandon. That's where you heard the divine voice clearly because it wasn't competing with their noise anymore. The isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It was the chrysalis stage where transformation happens in private before it's revealed in public. They see the butterfly now and want to take credit for the process, but they weren't there in the darkness. They weren't there when you were dissolving. They weren't there when you were rebuilding yourself cell by cell into something they no longer recognize. So where do you go from here? Forward. Always forward. You keep building what you see in your spirit. You keep trusting the vision that won't let you rest. You keep moving with the confidence of someone who knows they're divinely backed, not cocky confidence. certain confidence, the kind that doesn't need to convince anyone because it's already convinced in itself. You protect your energy like the precious resource it is. You guard your time like the non-renewable commodity it is. You honor your peace like the hard-won treasure it is. And you let the people who tried to stop you stay exactly where they are, behind you. The narrative will try to shift. People will attempt to rewrite what happened. They'll make themselves the victims of your success. They'll claim you changed, you got arrogant, you forgot where you came from. Let them. Your job isn't to control the narrative. Your job is to live your truth so loudly that the truth becomes undeniable. Keep winning, keep growing, keep expanding, keep taking up space. Not because you're trying to prove something to them, because you're honoring something in yourself. The divine spark that refused to be extinguished no matter how hard they blew. Here's the full circle moment. Remember that seed buried under concrete we talked about? You're not the seed anymore. You're the tree, strong-rooted, reaching. The concrete is still there in pieces around your base, evidence of what you broke through. But it's not your story anymore. It's just your history. The people who put that concrete there thought they were building your tomb. They were actually creating the pressure that made your roots go deeper. Every attempt to contain you made you stronger. Every effort to suppress you made you more determined. They wanted to write your ending. They wrote your beginning instead. You were built for this life, not metaphorically, literally. Every trial was training. Every setback was setup. Every betrayal was breakthrough in disguise. You thought you were surviving. You were being forged. You thought you were barely making it. You were being prepared. The whole time you were worried about whether you were enough. The divine was making sure you'd be ready for this moment. And you are. Ready, prepared, built for exactly this, for the taking over, the rising up, the stepping into, the claiming of everything that has your name on it. So no apologies, no second guessing, no shrinking, no dimming. You take over unapologetically because that's what you were designed to do. You rise without permission because permission was never required. You succeed without validation because your validation comes from something they can't access. And you keep moving forward because forward is the only direction that makes sense for someone who's been divinely propelled into their purpose. The takeover isn't just happening. The takeover is who you are now, built for this, born for this, becoming this, and there's not a single thing anyone can do to stop what's already in motion. This is your moment, not to prove them wrong, to prove yourself right, not to get revenge, to get free, not to make them see, to make yourself believe. You were built for this life, and this life is finally catching up to who you've always been.